The sound of the door slamming echoed through the small apartment like a thunderclap. Michael Carter froze mid-step, his hand still gripping the worn handle of his suitcase. For a moment, the room felt suffocatingly quiet, heavy with words that had never been spoken and years that had never been forgiven. Then, before he could react, she stepped in front of the door, pressing her back against it as if her entire body was the last wall standing between him and the life he was about to abandon. Her voice trembled, barely louder than a breath, but it carried the weight of everything they had lost. She blocked the door and whispered that he was not walking away this time. Before we continue, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Michael had spent most of his life running. Running from mistakes, running from guilt, and most of all running from people who cared too much to let him disappear quietly. The city of Cleveland, Ohio had always felt too small for a man carrying so many regrets. Every street corner reminded him of who he used to be. A man who once dreamed of building something meaningful but somehow ended up breaking everything he touched. Across the room stood Rachel Turner, the one person he had hurt the most. Her brown hair was tied loosely, strands falling across her face as if even time had grown tired of holding everything together. The apartment was modest, cluttered with memories Michael wished he could erase. A small couch with faded cushions. A coffee table with a chipped edge. A framed photo still sitting on the shelf, capturing a moment from years ago when both of them believed life was still full of possibilities. 3 years earlier, Michael had walked out without looking back. It had started with small mistakes. A lost job. Too many late nights trying to escape the pressure. Promises that slowly turned into excuses. Rachel had tried to hold everything together while Michael slowly unraveled. And when the weight of his failures became too heavy to carry, he chose the easiest path he knew. He left. No goodbye that made sense. No explanation that could heal the damage. Just silence. For 3 years, Michael drifted across cities like a ghost. Chicago, Phoenix, Denver. Temporary jobs, cheap motels, and endless nights staring at ceilings while the past replayed in his mind like a broken film reel. He convinced himself Rachel would eventually forget him. That she deserved a better life without someone like him dragging her down. But fate has a strange way of circling back to unfinished stories. A month ago, Michael returned to Cleveland for what he told himself would be the last time. He planned to collect the few belongings he had left behind and disappear for good. He thought Rachel had moved on. Maybe she had found someone better. Someone stable. Someone who didn't carry storms inside their chest. But when he opened the door to the apartment, Rachel was still there. Still fighting. Still believing in something he had already given up on. The moment he saw her again, every wall he had built around his heart began to crack. Yet fear pushed him to do what he had always done best. Run again. That was why he packed the suitcase. That was why he reached for the door. But Rachel had reached it first. Standing there, blocking his escape, she didn't look angry. She looked exhausted. Like someone who had spent years carrying a broken story alone. And in that quiet moment, Michael realized something that terrified him more than any failure he had ever faced. She hadn't stopped believing in him. Memories flooded the room without warning. The night they first met at a bookstore in downtown Cleveland. The road trip to Michigan where they got lost but laughed the entire time. The evenings when they sat on the rooftop sharing cheap pizza and dreaming about the future. Michael had buried those memories under layers of guilt, convinced they belonged to a life that no longer existed. But Rachel remembered everything. And somehow, she still thought it was worth saving. The silence between them stretched long enough to make the air feel fragile. Michael looked down at the suitcase, then back at Rachel. For years he had believed leaving was an act of mercy. That disappearing would free her from the chaos he carried. But standing there now, he understood the truth he had avoided for so long. Running had never protected anyone. It had only deepened the wounds. Slowly, Michael set the suitcase down. The sound of it touching the floor felt heavier than any apology he could have spoken. It was the first time in years he had stopped moving long enough to face the wreckage of his own choices. Rachel didn't smile. She didn't rush forward. She simply stayed there, as if giving him space to decide whether he was ready to stay for real this time. For the first time in years, Michael didn't feel like a man running from his past. He felt like someone standing at the edge of redemption. The road ahead would not be easy. Trust once broken does not magically repair itself overnight. There would be hard conversations, painful memories, and long nights rebuilding the fragile bridge between them. But for the first time, Michael believed the fight might actually be worth it. Before we reach the ending, tell us in the comments, do you believe people truly deserve second chances? Because sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is not running away. Sometimes, courage means staying. Months later, the same apartment looked different. Not because the furniture had changed, but because the atmosphere had. There was laughter again. There were quiet mornings filled with coffee and cautious hope. Michael had found work at a small construction company, slowly rebuilding his life the same way he rebuilt broken walls. One brick at a time. Rachel still kept the photo on the shelf. Only now, it no longer looked like a memory from a lost life. It looked like the beginning of a new one. And that door, the one Michael once tried to escape through, became something else entirely. Not an exit, but a place where someone once stood and refused to let a broken story end. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in forgiveness, and subscribe for more emotional journeys like this. Sometimes the smallest acts of love can stop someone from walking away forever.